when he interacts with his uncle, and his uncle just glorifyingly says, "It's a me, Mario." Like, it made me think of that sequence for some dumb, stupid reason. Some of you noticed that I did manage to cover a good chunk of some of the Gotham Knights material, from its initial reveal to some of the character trailers, and even a couple of breakdowns during certain gaming events like Gamescom. Well, maybe not Gamescom, actually, that's kind of the subject of this video, but you get the drift. Whenever there was a Game Awards or something hosted by Jeff Keighley, Gotham Knights somehow made a form of appearance. But as of late, I kind of fell off a little bit. They started to release things, and I was just looking at some of it and going, do I really want to make a whole separate video here? Whereas I got some brand new McFarlanes that just came in, or I discovered in the store, and some other topics that require a little bit more attention, such as the Batgirl cancellation and all these other things. And so I thought to myself, let me go ahead and just make this really off-the-cuff kind of video that's not necessarily just a video essay or a reaction, but just kind of taking everything that's been released thus far that I haven't covered already about Gotham Knights and try to compile it into a video where I pretty much try to tackle the question, is Gotham Knights potentially looking just a little better? Is this a definitive Batman-related game, not necessarily a Batman game, but a Batman-related game that we as Batman fans should probably keep an eye out for the remainder of the year? Let's start off with some of the pros, or at least some of the more definitive things that I generally do feel much more positive about than I did back when the first reveal trailer came out and the game was being showcased for the very first time. We were all kind of feeling like this was feeling just a little corporate, a little too grindy with the loots and the different forms of currencies, things that just weren't really feeling right. And I'm not gonna say I can speak for an awful lot of people, but I noticed that quite an awful lot of people were agreeing with me amongst the comment section and then amongst other reactions that I did watch when those initial trailers did make it seem like something was kind of off with the questing system and the looting system built or baked into Gotham Knights. Since then, I will admit that a little bit more of the presentation behind the game looks a little bit more solid. And when I say that, I'm taking the subjective nature of some of the characters' designs and looks and overall like physiques. I'm not a huge fan of just how some of these character models really do look like, but at least everything looks solid from a presentation standpoint. It doesn't inherently look all that janky, at least within the gameplay perspectives. Cutscenes is going to be a different beast altogether that I'll tackle in a further part of this video, but for now, at least a lot of the gameplay stuff, nothing looks, at least just yet, make me go, because I've seen a lot of like hyperbolic comments saying that this looks like a glorified PS3 game. I wouldn't even go that far, because it doesn't necessarily look that. Maybe it did back when it was first revealed, like I said, last year, and that kind of accounted a little bit for several of the different delays, but since then I feel like it has genuinely improved. It's not necessarily next gen. I don't look at this game and go, yes, that is a game that required for the PS4 and Xbox One versions to be canceled and solely focus on PS5 and Series X. Not at all. Not at all. That's still not jumping to me, but at the same time, I will not go as far as to label it a game from quite literally 2 generations back. Some of the gameplay mechanics around 2 specific members of the 4 playable characters, the Bat family as it were, do look a little solid to me, and those are Batgirl and Robin. I know some people were also kind of gravitating quite a bit towards Nightwing, specifically with a boss battle that was showcased recently that I will kind of tackle in momentarily, but to me, and this could be more reliant on the subjective side of things, I think it's just more so about Robin and Batgirl. And out of those two, Batgirl, because, and you could attribute this towards some biases, is the fact that she is probably the one that looks like she shares more DNA amongst her fighting style and her combat style and how she applies arsenals to her way of traversal and her way of navigating around the area that seems more succinct to the way that Batman would within this universe. And I think that's probably why those 2 particular ones stand out to me as far as characters that look fun enough to course through Gotham through. And just recently they released a villains trailer. It was a very quick story-based like 2-minute trailer that showcased all the different villains and what exactly they have up against their sleeve. Not much on the Court of Owls, and there's a particular reason as to why they're not really showing too much of the Court of Owls on any scale whatsoever, whether it be through a gameplay deep dive or a story trailer such as this. But they did manage to shed some light as to what exactly it is that these villains are doing as soon as a form of a power vacuum is being left in Gotham City, because it looks like some of the much bigger power players are kind of missing from the picture. And we're not just talking about Batman or Gordon, it also does look like Joker, Two-Face, and even Penguin are nowhere to be found, and this gives ample enough opportunity for some other villains to take advantage of that vacuum. And to me personally, there was something about that story trailer that I thought was really well cut together. And once again, going back to what I mentioned about presentation, there was a good amount shown about some of these villains that were put in that trailer, from Harley Quinn to a few of the henchmen that you have to fight, and then Clayface. Clayface looks like he could be a genuine menace in this one. Sure, something could be done about those one-liners, those theatrical one-liners, but if there's something that I think we can rely on Clayface to always do, whether it be in the comics, the animated show, or even some of the video games, likewise with Batman Arkham City, is that sometimes things don't always look the way that they appear. Perfect segue, because speaking of the way things appear and look, that's probably how we're going to then transfer into what I'm not necessarily vibing with as far as what they've been showing from Gotham Knights, specifically the things that really pushed me a couple more steps back and made me go, something ain't right about this. And that is that boss fight with Harley Quinn that was showcased, which surprises me considering that quite an awful lot of people actually did like what was being shown here with this boss fight. Some of them even labeling like, oh hey, we're finally seeing something that looks challenging, something that looks like it could be a threat and could provide some awesome and very fun gameplay and some great combat mechanics. And then other people saying that, oh, this person looks like he or she knows how to play instead of just someone who's playing on easy mode. And the entire time I was trying to find something that will lead me to believe that comment, to kind of fluctuate that comment in my head. And yet not a single time did that ever cross my mind, because as I was watching that 7-minute playthrough of Harley Quinn's boss fight, nothing really stood out to me as being of importance. It just felt like it kind of sluggish and kind of weirdly paced as far as how she was, not only as far as how Nightwing was fighting Harley Quinn, but also how she was delivering her lines. She didn't feel intimidating, how she was delivering her posture, her movements as she was trying to attack Nightwing, and how Nightwing was deflecting some of those. I don't know, there was just something that just felt kinetically off about that boss fight that just did not instill any form of confidence to me. And before you can even argue that that could just be for that boss fight, no, it feels like something that could very well ripple for the remainder of the game, and that is that dialogue and those performances. The thing that immediately jumped to me was that it felt like all of these different actors, and it could just be a theory and therefore could be proven wrong. I would be glad to be proven wrong on this account, but is it just me, or does it feel like some of these actors recorded all their lines, and maybe there's some mocap footage out there? If someone can link it in the comment section below, please do. But the vibe that I'm getting, the tone, the actual delivery and chemistry I'm getting from these people interacting with each other is that they all recorded their lines either in the booth or on a mocap stage separate from each other. There's a degree of separation that I'm just feeling from everybody involved. The way Nightwing and Harley Quinn taunt each other prior to that boss fight just felt like, you speak. Okay, now you speak. It didn't feel like two people actually talking directly to one another. And the reason for why I know that that's not just isolated to that boss fight is because later on I did go back and rewatch a cutscene that showcases an interaction between Batgirl, or Barbara in this case, and Dick Grayson, Nightwing, while they're working out. And they're literally working out. This is a teen-rated game, but they're working out back at the Belfry and interacting with each other, dumping some exposition as to what happened to them in their past leading up to the events of the game, and why it is that Nightwing is feeling kind of down about what's happened with Bruce and how hasn't been able to let it go. And again, there's just something about the delivery and the way they're just kind of reacting to each other that it just makes me feel like they're just not there with each other. They're not there interacting on the mocap stage, or they're not talking to each other in the booth. They all record their lines kind of separately. And it's this cutscene where I will sadly have to give some merit to the criticism that this does look like a last gen or even a last gen PS3 game, because this is where I'm looking at the facial animations, the textures, and the graphics and going, I remember playing this game when it was called Assassin's Creed 2 on the PS3. I'm sorry, I don't know why that specific game jumped to my brain, but it just reminded me of all those moments that Ezio, as a younger Ezio in AC2, would interact with members of his family and trying to learn about the assassins. I don't know why, but it just made me think of that sequence when he interacts with his uncle, and his uncle just glorifyingly says, "It's me, Mario." Like, it made me think of that sequence for some dumb, stupid reason. And the facial animations here don't look all that far out from what was being represented in those prior games. I'm sorry. And the last thing that I'll heavily criticize is that out of all of the character trailers, the one that I had left to still check out that I haven't not managed to react to on camera and provide its own separate video that I decided to lump in here is the Red Hood one. And good thing that I did, because as soon as that trailer ended, I was pretty grateful that I didn't go through all the trouble of setting up the TV, connecting it to my laptop, setting up the microphone, the camera, and all that good stuff, just to witness a very underwhelming character trailer for arguably one of the more badass characters out of the Bat family from across different mediums, comics, animated movies, TV shows, etc. Red Hood. And nothing about that character trailer made me go, yeah, that seemed badass. From a little bit of his backstory, you know, firing up that tablet, like, oh no, something happened with this tablet, and that way his design just looks underneath the Red Hood, pun intended there, and then going on to that terrible looking mystic power that he's got going on. I can't even talk. So where does that leave us with Gotham Knight? Well, to kind of then take this Venn diagram I just presented with the pros, the cons, the good, and the bad, and then try to mix it a little bit here in the gray area, this is what's called the third act. The little bit of the introspective moment within what would typically be a video essay to leave you pondering with some questions that you can then answer in the comment section below, which is a little bit of the details, previews, and information that I have managed to watch and made me go, okay, there is still some potential here, but with some cautious optimism to kind of put me at bay and temper expectations so that then I don't get fully disappointed come October 21st. One of those pieces of information comes in the form of a video that IGN most recently did to kind of close out their whole coverage of the game throughout the month of August, and it was, I can't say it was their final preview because they didn't label it as a final preview, but it was their definitive 10-minute preview on Gotham Knights that they posted at the very end of the month. And to me, this was probably one of the better pieces of information they put out there, because it did a solid deconstruction of how to actually engage with the game in a way that sounds really enticing and entertaining. And one of the facets about that preview that really got me curious, amongst the other stuff that IGN surprisingly was able to put out there and actually deconstruct in a very informative way. Shout out to the people who put that together, from the way that it was edited, written, and narrated, the guy with the British accent. I thought to myself, you know what, you guys did a pretty bang up job to actually kind of glow up the game in a way that I didn't think was going to be done as of late. And the three things that stood out to me from those previews were the style of questing, being able to take up on quests and being able to kind of go through the routine of crime fighting, especially within the day and night cycle, how the majority of the game is going to be taking place during night, just like Batman himself and pretty much the majority of the Rocksteady games. But there is going to be daytime events in the game that are going to be included, most predominantly during the same as in the Belfry, where you have to do a little bit of that detective work. Outside of that, though, you're going to have your team of your four members of the Bat family, but the developers don't want you to just have four Batman, four successors. You want to take one of the three and have them fill the mantle of being Gotham's hero without just being another Batman. And to me, that was kind of repurposed in my head as a statement going, you can take one of these 4 and main them like a fighting game, like, oh, I main this person. And you know how I mentioned back then when, as of right now, the one that I'm gravitating towards the most is Batgirl. Does this potentially mean that I can just main Batgirl, level her up, acquire all the best stats and stuff like that, and just make her the proper successor to Batman? And is there going to be like 4 different endings where one of them becomes Batman, and it all solely depends on just the choices that I make and just how much I level this character up and equip him with the best stats and give him the best skill tree, which is another thing that was also kind of showcased from those IGN videos, was the skill tree, how it kind of unlocks over the course of time, and how you're able to kind of create your own build of a Red Hood or your own build of a Batgirl. And despite that sounding a little lootery, a little bit, kind of catering to the Destiny demographic or the MMO demographic, kind of applying a little bit of a Gotham/Batman coat of paint, while at the same time eliminating some of the egregious stuff like microtransactions, does spell potential there. There is quite an awful lot of distinct potential there. But I do also recognize that that comes at the risk of it getting repetitive, of it getting very loot grindy, especially when you're dealing with some of those quests, because it showed in that preview some of the quests that can happen, and I do appreciate that they pay attention to the level of detail of having certain quests, or rather certain crime events, take place, and then if you don't take care of them right away or within a certain amount of time, because you are still kind of living underneath a day and night cycle, once that night is up, there goes that crime, just like a natural crime would in real life, and I actually kind of have to respect that. What then has to be kind of emphasized, and we need to layer some importance on, is how much am I going to care about whether or not I can do that event again, or if it's going to become so repetitive that I can look at that event and go, oh, just give it another like day or 2 in-game time and it's going to pop up again. I don't have to worry about it. There's no stakes there. That reward didn't need it, or it's so blown up now that I can get those in some other kind of events, and they're procedurally generated, and I don't want to come across a moment where I'm going to look at an event or a quest or something to do in this very large and expansive version of Gotham, the biggest one that they've ever put together, like I mentioned before, and go, been there, done that, I don't have to do it again. You do it once, you've done it before, or you've done all of them. I don't want to iterate that phrase as I review and as I critique this game and as I play it. And that's one of my greatest fears, is this thing being drawn out to be repetitive, to look grindy, and having all these enemies lack very severe forms of variety. I mean, it could be one thing to tackle some of these boss fights, some of these rogue gallery of villains, like with Harley Quinn and Clayface, as the developers call them, villain knights or whatever the term may be. But forming the cartilage in between these fights are going to be all of these what appear to be rather generic enemies. I mean, just with different skins and different coats of paint. You have your traditional brawlers, you probably have your the ones that kind of run to you and bum rush you, you're going to have your ranged ones, and then of course you're going to have your heavies with the shield and then some form of mace type weapon. And then just swap out the skins. The Court of Owls have theirs, the Maniacs have theirs, their more militant armies or mobs or whatever the hell gang members amongst the city of Gotham have theirs. They just kind of swap out different looks, but ultimately through these previews, I've already seen pretty much the extent of what the people that I'm going to be fighting on ground level are going to be. And a concern that can go in either direction, whether it be for a positive or a negative note, are the Court of Owls. As they mentioned throughout the previews, they were very lax about showing the other villains, like Harley Quinn's material. I mean, they were getting kind of spoilery with that boss fight, in my opinion. But with the Court of Owls, they were very, very secretively, to the point where there was only so much that they were able to let IGN actually play through when they were invited over to the offices to then get a hands-on kind of experience, or rather hands-off experience, to talk about the game during their previous segments. So what is it about the Court of Owls angle that is so secretive? Is it because on one side of the spectrum, it is so badass and so cool and there's some great reveals there that they want to keep things as close to the chest as possible? Or is it going in a direction kind of a la Arkham Knight, where a lot of us are already kind of starting to gestate our own little theories and they're scared that we might have gotten it right a little too easy? I don't know. But one can only speculate, and we really don't have that much time to do it now since the game has been moved up a few days to October 21st, which when they announced that during the Gamescom night event when they showcased that Valence trailer, at first I thought, oh, it's coming a little earlier, holy shit, end of September, and it only ended up being 4 days. It could have been a little better as far as a push up, but at the same time, playing devil's advocate, the fact that they pushed it up, period. Like, barely any developers do that overall. They sometimes, even if a game has gone gold, they leave the original release date. For them to push it up, I'll argue that that is actually a pretty decent vote of confidence that actually was the icing on the cake to compel me to make this video. So now, I give it to you guys. Post in the comment section below, are you still down to play Gotham Knights Day 1, October 21st? Has your opinion changed since its initial reveal? Has it stayed the same? Has it kind of fluctuated and flipped back and forth as far as having you go, holy shit, this game is actually looking a lot better. I'm probably going to pick it up Day 1, or I'm going to wait for a sale, or you know what, no, this is not my Batman Arkham game. This is not my Rocksteady. I'm going to wait on that Suicide Squad game, or whenever the next great Batman game comes around. Let me know, are you guys' insights below, especially on some of that IGN coverage that has been showcased thus far. And if you guys enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button. If not, hit the thumbs down. Subscribe not only for more Batman stuff if you like this video, or for more Spider-Man related content. And haven't made a formal decision, but I'm thinking that maybe Gotham Knights itself might be my return to streaming. May not be on Twitch, considering the issues I have with that platform. But potentially here on this YouTube channel, I might be bringing live streaming back with Gotham Knights. We'll see. If you guys want to stay tuned for that, like I mentioned before, subscribe, turn on notifications. Until then, though, stay humble.